Good afternoon. It's Robert Chappell, Executive Editor of Madison365, with your daily update for Thursday, February 25th. We're going to lead off with some COVID news that is very bad, in that it's bad for teachers in Dane County, at least. I haven't heard much. I've asked around a little bit. I haven't heard much from other counties. But PHMDC tells me they were supposed to get about 10,000 doses of vaccine this week, for this coming week, for next week. And they're only going to get about 1,200. Now, they had allocated 7,000 of those 10,000 for teachers and plan to do the same the following week, the week of March 8th. But they're only going to get 1,200 total. And even though teachers are eligible for vaccine beginning March 1st, apparently the state DHS has now changed something in the eligibility such that even the 1,200 that Dane County is getting are not allowed to be used for teachers. So that's not great. Part of the whole thing of restarting schools, reopening schools, was that teachers would get vaccinated soon. And they were supposed to get vaccinated beginning March 1st. That's not happening now. It's going to delay it at least until March 15th. PHMDC tells me they're hopeful that they can start March 15th to vaccinate teachers. And in the meantime, they're going to take the little allocation that they have and start to and really focus on people over 65, because there's still several thousand of people in that category. So again, we can talk a lot, and we do talk a lot about prioritization, but who gets priority? And access, who has access? A lot of people don't have access to primary care, facilities and stuff like that, which is why they're trying to do this on a kind of a big community basis. We can talk about those things and argue about who gets priority and stuff, but if you don't have the doses, you don't have the doses. And right now we don't have the doses. Now, in terms of teachers, as I mentioned, a lot of schools, most schools in Dane County are open, at least in some measure, like 2 days a week kind of thing, where students are at school 2 days a week, but teachers are there 5 days a week, just with different groups of kids. So ideally, those sort of mitigation measures, keeping classrooms small, keeping kids in small groups, keeping everybody with their masks on, etc., will reduce the risk for teachers. But boy, everybody would be more comfortable moving to full 5-day in-person instruction if teachers and the rest of the school staff were vaccinated. And that's not going to happen now, at least for a couple more weeks. Keeping in mind, it takes like a month at least after your first shot before you're fully vaccinated, because you got to get those 2 shots, and then you got to wait like a week or 2 weeks after that before your immunity is really built up. So that's disappointing news, to say the least, that the state is changing its allocation of doses and somehow changing the eligibility of those doses that they are handing out. I didn't get a lot of detail on that. That whole thing just broke in the past hour or so, 2 hours maybe. So wish I had more detail. The one detail I did ask specifically is, basically PHMDC was going to do this at Alliant Energy Center, and just like any teachers or school staff or childcare workers, come to Alliant Energy Center, get your vaccine. But they're not going to do that now. So I asked, in theory, could a teacher just go to their doctor, with their GHC or UW Health or Dean or whatever? And the answer was that all of those, primary care providers are partnering with PHMDC to administer vaccines. So if you call your doctor right now, they're going to refer you to PHMDC. So that doesn't help either. So, it's frustrating. It's bad news. I don't think anybody's happy about it. The HMDC was not defensive about it at all. They're just like, this is the facts. This is where we are. There is some good news on the vaccine front, though, on a statewide basis. We are past 400,000 people who have gotten vaccinated. In fact, we're at almost 412,000. Like, we blew right past 400,000. In fact, we have almost 26,000 new people finished their vaccine in the past 24 hours. Almost 17,000 people got their first test in the past 24 hours. So first of all, I think it's good that most of the people who are getting shots right now, it's their second shot. So we're finishing people off before we start new people as much. But those are still big numbers, and those numbers are getting bigger each day, which is what I like to see. I want to see this accelerate. And not only that we're just churning through getting lots of people vaccinated, but that we're getting more and more people vaccinated every day. How we're going to keep that up with only 1,200 doses in Dane County, I don't know. We'll see if that drops off next week or not. But we're past 7% of the population, has been now fully vaccinated. So we are getting there, and we will get there. In the meantime, we will continue to keep an eye on the spread numbers, because this is going to keep spreading. Coronavirus is one of the most contagious and deadly viruses this country's ever seen, this world has ever seen. And it is going to keep spreading even as we are trying to get ahead of it with vaccine. And that's evident today. But the numbers today are better than they were yesterday. Remember, yesterday I told you a few numbers had gone up, which is a slight concern. I am much less concerned today, put it that way. Now, part of this is a data thing. It's still good, but it's like we had on February 23rd, there were 54,000 negative tests. Now, I've explained this before, but I'll say it again because it's not always readily apparent. When I tell you how many new tests were done every day, yesterday it was 5,264. Today it's 13,177. Those are not all the tests that have been done today. Those are all the new tests that have a new result. So either that's somebody getting their first negative test, or somebody who's had a negative test before but got their first positive test. Right? So that we know that there's, even when I tell you there's 3,000 tests, 5,000 tests in a day, what we know is once you put all those tests on the day that they were actually processed, you're getting 30,000 roughly tests processed every day. Most of them, like upwards of 80 to 90% of those, are people testing negative who've been tested negative before. So they don't show up in that day-to-day new test number. But they are factored into the 7-day average number. I hope that's making a little bit of sense. So for the past couple of months, we've been at that sort of 30,000 a day range, a little more like 35,000 tests every day. And suddenly, for some reason, just today, we find out that there are 54,000 negative tests attributed to the February 23rd, which was Tuesday. No idea why. There's no explanation. And we've asked, but there's no explanation. It might be just a data catch up. It might be that not all of those were actually tested on that day, but might have been a backlog at a lab that got undone or something. But compared to those 54,000 tests that day, there were only 827 positive. So for that particular day, the testing rate was very low, the positive test rate. And that has the result of then showing our current 7-day test rate at 2.4%, which is great. It's a little bit like grain of salt. Like, it's 2.4% of all the tests were positive. But that's taking into account one day of a lot of negative tests. I wouldn't say it's artificially low, but I would just kind of take it with that grain of salt. Now, the other weird data thing that happened today is we are reporting 52 fatalities, but 32 of them are in Jefferson County. Now, the only explanation for that, and again, we don't have an official explanation for this, although we've asked. The only reasonable explanation for that is that Jefferson County has been collecting death certificates for months and not reporting them. I don't think they've been meaning to not report them. I don't think it's malicious. It could be an error. It could just be a process thing. I'll try to find out. But I genuinely do not think anybody was trying to hide anything. But we know that Stephanie went and looked at these death data and went back as far as November. There were still new deaths being reported today that occurred in November, and she didn't go back any further, but it's reasonable to think that some of those 32 fatalities actually took place. People actually passed away in September and October of last year, and are just today being confirmed as COVID deaths for whatever reason. Okay, so that again is another big grain of salt for us. As we look at 52 fatalities today, it's more like 20, really. And what we should be doing is adding a couple of deaths each day over the past, we'll take those 32 deaths in Jefferson County, spread them out over the last, almost 5 months. Now, what that does, though, is it because we don't have a solid understanding of what day all those happen, we still have to include those 32 fatalities in our current 7-day average, because all we average is the number of fatalities that are reported every day. And that jumped from 18 to 23. But again, we know that 32 of those deaths did not happen recently. So we'll continue to keep an eye on it. That average will come back down unless there's another big data dump for some reason. But again, I'm just trying to be very transparent and honest with you about this data. Again, I don't think anybody's trying to hide anything. I think it's just there's so much data. And you have 72 different counties, 72 different medical examiners' offices doing things differently, 72 different health departments, and they're not always in sync. Right. Overall, though, the numbers are looking pretty decent. That February 23rd data dump gives us the advantage of today having 13,177 new results available, of which 840 are positive. So the positive test rate just for the day is 6.4%, which is really the lowest it's been in a long time. Also, I mentioned the 2.4% positive test rate over 7 days. The last time it was lower than that, you ready? March 10th, 2020. If you remember, schools closed on the 13th of March last year. So this was like the Tuesday of that first week, the first sort of the week where all the wheels fell off in Wisconsin. The last time our positive test rate was lower than it is today was the day before the NBA canceled the season last year. Which means we're almost back to where we started. Now, the difference is that, today we're reporting 840 new cases. On March 10th, when the positive test rate was 1.7, the number of new cases was 3. Which means, I want to verify that. I'm pretty sure that's right. Which means it was like 3 out of 100, there were 110 tests and 3 of them were positive. And today we have 13,000 tests and 800 were negative. So everything's relative, obviously. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was wrong. On March 10th, there was 1 positive test and 18 negative tests. And the 7-day positive test rate was 1.7. March 11th, there were 3 positive tests and 43 negative tests, and the 7-day positive test rate was 3.8. So it went from 1.7 on that Tuesday to 3.8 on that Wednesday, and it hasn't been lower than that since. It hasn't been lower than 2.6, 2.8 since then. Until today, it's 2.4. So, one hopes we can continue to move that downward. Really hope we can. I think we can. If we continue to do what we're doing, and continue to push the vaccines, I think we can stay, under 3%. So that is what I have on coronavirus today. Stay with us. I have a little clip here for you, a little video that you might really enjoy. This isn't like a regular commercial. Okay, this is actually a cool clip that you'll actually probably like, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side of the break, along with some other local news for you and some national news. And don't go away. Stick with us. We'll be right back after this.
I had to grow up fast, and I started college when I was 16, so I had to grow up really fast.
Well, time out. Back up. Why did you go to college at 16? What was that? What? Like, how does that? You graduated at 16?
Yeah, I graduated at 16, started college at 16. So I had to grow up incredibly fast, and I had to learn quickly.
But why'd you graduate at 16? Like, why did you do that? Like, you were just that smart that you had to.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it. I want to let you.
I'm asking. No, I'm asking.
I want to watch you say.
Right.
Smart. I just wanted. I want to see. I want to look here on the Zoom screen and watch you say.
We'll have to edit
Mandela
that out.
Barnes, you were that smart.
We have to edit that out. You're right.
That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to see.
That is, of course, a clip from today's episode of Real Talk with Henry Sanders. His guest, Mandela Barnes, the Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin. It's a really fascinating conversation. It's not about news, not about policy initiatives at the moment, but about Mandela's backstory. And the fact that nobody knew that he graduated high school at 16 and went to Alabama A&M. And as a 16-year-old kid, ran for freshman class president. And it didn't go very well. But he learned from that experience. So they talked about a lot it's about a 40-minute interview. They talked a lot about overcoming adversity, overcoming failures and knowing when to jump into races like that, and what motivated him to run for lieutenant governor, and what that the calculus that went into that, and like how going to HBCU, from Milwaukee, where very segregated city, but there's no HBCUs around here really. So to go to Alabama A&M, to go to an HBCU, change his perspective. I also talked about kind of why he's still single, like how he knows who to let into his circle. How do you know who to trust when you're at that sort of level? When you're young, he was 32 when he was elected lieutenant governor. So really, really fascinating interview. You can find that at Madison365.org/real talk. Or you can just go to our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/Madison365. And if you subscribe there, you can get all of these interviews, and you get the notifications when they come up. But also, wherever you get your podcasts, there's an audio version: Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartMedia, wherever you get podcasts. Just look for Real Talk with Henry Sanders. You got to do the with Henry Sanders part, because weirdly, there's like 1,000 podcasts called Real Talk. But if you do Real Talk with Henry Sanders, it'll pop right up. Subscribe, because we got some more. I happen to know the next couple of weeks worth of guests that he's going to have on, and they're going to be very, very good conversations. I would definitely urge you to subscribe either to the YouTube channel to watch them, or to subscribe to the podcast and give it a listen. Yes, he is. So let's talk a little bit more about some other local news. You might have heard of One City Schools. Colleen Kerr is the founder of One City Schools. Now, One City Schools is not a private school. It's a private nonprofit that owns and operates a public charter school. You might remember, if you've been around Madison a while, you might remember Colleen attempted to start a charter school within the Madison Metropolitan School District way back like 2010, 11, and he was going to call it Mad City Prep, and he was going to be a sort of all black boys school kind of situation. And the Madison, sort of Madison white liberal community just wasn't going to let that happen. So they didn't grant him the charter. So he started One City as a preschool, sort of private, non-profit preschool, and earned a state charter. So now it's a chartered school. It's a chartered public school, but it's chartered by the state, not by the school district, which means anybody can, there's limited enrollment, but anybody is eligible to enroll beginning March 1st. And there's no tuition. It's paid for by property taxes like every other school. Andrew, that's a great question, and I will get to that. He's on my slide deck. Don't worry. So the charter from the state was originally for kindergarten, first grade. It is now this past year he got approved. The school got approved for a charter of up to sixth grade. I'm sorry. So the school this year is expanding. This coming year, the 2021-22 school year, is expanding to fourth grade. There's currently kindergarten through second grade. The current second graders will make up the first class of third graders, but fourth graders is going to be entirely like open enrollment. So anybody in Madison or the area, like they've got people from, you don't have to live in Madison, you just have to live in Wisconsin. But if it's the south side of Madison school, it's mostly black and brown student body. It's the most diverse staff of any school in Madison. I'm not trying to like advocate for it necessarily. And you might have an opinion about charter schools. And I think a lot of times people conflate charter schools and voucher schools, which are very different things. So just be aware of that before you dismiss it as an option. But it is, it's a way to experiment. It's a way to try to do things a little bit differently. And it's been a pretty successful school so far, I think. But it is expanding, so that's kind of a cool, exciting thing that it's a sort of Southside school focused on Black and brown kids that is having success and expanding its offerings. Also in the news today, the Reverend C. Wright Humanitarian Award has been given to, I'm going to make sure I get her name right here, Tammy Fleming, who is the director of Shelter from the Storm, which is a temporary housing facility for people who are unhoused and homeless. She also founded the Friends of the State Street family in 2011, which is another organization that focuses on homelessness. So this is an award that the city of Madison gives to people who are working specifically to lift people up, to help end suffering, to connect people with resources, and make people's lives better. And so that's congratulations to Tammy. That's it's a significant honor every year that the city bestows. And to Andrew's question, this is Tyler Allen. He is the Hawaiian version of Arjen Robben. He's a winger. He's from Hawaii. He's he describes himself to me as half white, half Asian. Which it's really fun when you forget sometimes when you interview professional athletes, you're also interviewing like 22-year-old kids. And so I got to talk to Tyler on the phone today, and I asked, given that our thing is people of color, right? I often ask, how do you identify ethnically? And most outlets don't ask that, but I do, and I do it. I don't be like, what are you? I'm like, I ask, so ethnically speaking, how do you identify yourself? And he was like, what? What did you say? Like, you mean like my races? I was like, yeah. How do you identify? He's like, oh, I'm half white, half Asian. So it was a fun little interview though. He's like Andrew said, he's from Hawaii. He went to UNLV, played there for 4 years. He joined Reno 1868 last year in the USL Championship, which is a one level above Ford Madison, and didn't didn't play for them. He joined them sort of mid-season and ended up didn't really factor in with them. So he signed now with Fort Madison. It's got a lot of pace. If you look at this video, he's a very fast kid, and he'll be looking to play right wing, and he's also played some right back. So I might fill in for Pato Diaz now and again. And it looks like a pretty exciting player. And the attacking force that Carl Craig is putting together, it looks pretty promising. I'll be honest with you. And I would also venture a guess. I don't have any inside information at all. But knowing that they've now signed Derek Gebhardt on one wing and Tyler Allen on the other, that makes me think that Paulo Jr., who played at that sort of right wing position for the past couple of years for Fort Madison, is likely not to return. I would think that this signing signals that he's going to move on. But I have no insider information on that. But it should be this kid looks really fun to watch anyway. So I think that is all the news I have today. And Andrew says he gone. I think Andrew is correct on this. Sorry, we haven't seen an official announcement on that, but that's my guess. All right. That is all the news I have for you today. I appreciate your attention. Please do consider hitting the old share button on there and get more people to consume the real news. And we can overshadow the disinformation if we just share the real news as much as possible. So thank you for joining me today. I will be back tomorrow. We'll have It's Only 10 Minutes tomorrow morning. The Daily News Podcast tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. We can listen in then, and otherwise I'll see you tomorrow right back here at 4. Have a great evening.
This is 365 Media.